That picture's going to come in here. Might want to get out your Thoreau poster if you have one. Working on the lighting. Give me a second. Oh, heck, it's raining. Back in the garage. All right, how we doing today? What we got out there? I thought I'd start with the poster because it is of Thoreau. And it does say, rather than love, than money, than fame, give me truth. All right, and that is quoted by Chris McCandless in the book, and it's from Thoreau in Walden. Henry David Neckbeard, nice. I don't like the lighting here, so I think I'm going to slide back into the garage. So bear with me. All right, let's do this. Dang lighting. All right. How we doing today? Good. Good to see you. Catherine. Good to see you, Adrian. So for Peter's question about how to return everything, there is going to be a day in which juniors show up to school and return everything. Unfortunately, the day of returning everything is before our last little reading about this book, but that's all right. I'm not going to rush everything. We can talk about the end of the book after you turn it in. So I think the day picked. They're still working out the details. It'll come through on Remind, and when I find out, I obviously will pass it on to you through Remind and also through Instagram. But right now, the school locker cleanout is going to be the 20th, 21st, and 22nd, which is Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I think I'm going to be up there the Thursday and the Friday. And bring anything you got from school, and just pause the French Prince of Bel-Air, Jacob. We have the stuff's out on Twitter already, Peter. I'll check that out. And but anything you have of mine, or really anything from school at all, just drop it off and we'll figure it out this summer. I definitely need my Into the Wild and Malcolm X's back because they're costly, and I need to make sure I can put them in everybody's hands next year. Well, with that, I want to get started on 4 through 6. Peter, I'll get on Twitter and find it and then send it out. Morning, Courtney. Or, sorry, afternoon. Morning, afternoon. What does it matter? Well, Jacob, if you don't have DVR, I don't know what to tell you. Starting out with the book. I'm going to talk about the power of quotations, okay? Because one of the criticisms of Krakauer in this book is his presumption that he assumed that he understood what Chris McCandless was thinking because of highlights that he made in his books. Okay, now critics say you have no idea what he was thinking. You don't even know if he's the one that marked in those books. All right. Well, the books were found with him when he was dead, and he had been reading them, and he had left marks in them. The thing is we mark things in our books. Okay. We mark things in our books when they strike us. Now, I'm talking about school aside, where you're looking for facts and figures. I'm talking about you're reading some kind of philosophy. Think of music. You hear a song, For some reason, it resonates here or it resonates here, and you like lines out of it. That's human nature. And for instance, in Thoreau, just the other day, when I was reading Thoreau up at the park, Thoreau talks about building his house. It cost him $28 to build his house. Well, what the hell does that mean, right? What's $28 in 1840? Well, he says, I thus found that the student who wishes for a shelter can obtain one for a lifetime at the expense not greater than the rent which he now pays annually. That is what $28 is. So he spent and built a cabin for himself for $28, what it cost to rent a room for a year. That puts that in perspective. And he's talking to students. One of the lines from here is how his book's not really for anybody but students. So how to live cheap, on the cheap and smart, And so that's that's how you kind of put those types of things in perspective. Also, again, lines that I highlight in here, they touch me intellectually or spiritually or emotionally. I don't mark stuff in here that doesn't make any sense to me or that I don't care about. So that's fine, Emily. You can always watch this later, okay? So don't worry about being here if you need to be at the Zoom live. One of the quotes that he says in here, and I read it yesterday on Instagram or the other day on Instagram, just about this need for capitalism to lay a telegraph wire from Maine to Texas and laying a wire under the Atlantic so we could hear stuff about Europe. He's like, the thing that a flapping American ear will find out first is that the Prince Adelaide has whooping cough. He's like, who gives a damn, right? Who cares about all that stuff, right? And so he's kind of a cynic when it comes to getting, news and knowing what's going on. He doesn't care, right? He doesn't care. He wants to live in the moment, okay? And this is what Chris McCandless is after. He's trying to escape capitalism. Thoreau's father was a pencil maker. Chris McCandless's father is very wealthy, that you're going to find out. But one of the lines that struck me here, and he says, I've learned that the swiftest traveler is he that goes afoot. And I like that line. Always did. Marked it 25 years ago when I read it for the first time, or even longer. It's if you want to go somewhere, just go. Just start walking. Don't worry about saving up money, buying this, buying that, flying there, taking the train. He's like, just by the time you work, make all the money to get there, you could have just walked there. Now I know it seems a little, romantic, but this line here, and this is where I'll leave you, about coming back to Chris McCandless. He says, he finds it kind of stupid that a person would spend the best part of his life earning money in order to enjoy a questionable liberty during the least valuable part of it. Meaning, I'm going to work really, really hard when I'm in my 20s, 30s, and 40s. I'm going to kill myself, save up money. So when I'm in my 60s, I can retire. I can do whatever I want. That's not exactly the healthiest part of our life. So why would you do that? Why would you not be sensible and enjoy your life all the way through? He says, it reminds me of the Englishman who went to India to make a fortune first in order that he might return to England and live the life of a poet. Okay. Well, if you want to be a poet, you be a starving artist. Be a poet today. Don't wait about it. Don't worry about working yourself. And India was not the place to be in the 1800s. If you were, it was if you wanted to make a fortune and you were English. If you were Indian, not so good. Let's see here. Aiden. Well, you can't walk into Disney World now. What do you want to do at Disney World, Aiden? You want to work there? Because you can. I can tell you how to do it. All right. All right. So moving on, I just want you to remember when John Krakauer uses quotations from Chris McCandless, they are markings in his books, and he left little notes, and he's making generalizations about it. But I think we can be fairly comfortable thinking that it has something to do with McCandless's spirit and thought process. Okay. So if we start on page for chapter 4, page 25, there's a little thing about the desert. I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's too long, but it talks about the desert, and I don't think any of you have been to the desert. I've been out to the desert, and the desert's not one little place. It's most of the Southwest, and you are not used to it because wherever you live, Fairfield or especially here, I'm surrounded by hills in Kentucky, I can't walk anywhere where I don't feel not boxed in by hills, but comforted by hills. I feel very comfortable here, like there's a a motherly embrace because of the hills. When you're out west, Ronnie, you've been there. Tell me where you've been. When you're out west, you feel rather exposed because 360 degrees, it can be eternity. In some places, you can see for 100 miles. It is very intimidating. The sky is huge because it goes from horizon to horizon and almost beyond our concepts. It's like being out on the ocean, and it's daunting. But this whole thing here is about the desert, how the portion overhead is infinitely vaster and it's intimidating. Vegas, not the desert, okay? But it says, to the desert go prophets and hermits. Through deserts go pilgrims and exiles. Here the leaders of the great religions have sought their therapeutic and spiritual values of retreat, not to escape, but to find reality. Jesus went to the desert. Mojave, very good. Jesus went to the desert. And remember, desert doesn't necessarily just mean like sand and sand dunes. That's part of it. But you can go to what's called high desert, which is scrub, very low vegetation, very low rain, and just Utah, the whole state is a desert. Nevada is nearly all a desert. Vegas is an oasis in the middle of it, okay? But getting out there, I have not been to Mojave. I definitely want to. Jared, I wish I was getting a haircut. It's getting a little long on the sides. So moving along, talk about the people that he runs into, right? He runs into the Burris crew, right? The husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend. I think I don't know that they're married. And they really become attached to him, and they kind of adopt him a little bit, right? And then we're going to talk about Ronald Franz later on. But he must have been a rather affable person. Everybody who came in contact with Chris McCandless very much liked him, okay? And, though he was a bit eccentric, Thoreau was, Whitman was, Emerson was, right? Though he was eccentric, people did like him. If you want to look, you're on 28, talks about Thoreau. It says, this is about when he gave up on his car. He says, McCandless could endeavor to explain that he answered to statutes on a higher order, that as a latter-day adherent of Henry David Thoreau, he took as gospel the essays of On the Duty of Civil Disobedience and considered it his moral responsibility to flout the laws of the state, right? He does not like to be told what to do, all right? Emerson didn't too much, but he conformed, and certainly Thoreau did not. And McCandless is out there to see the world. He wants to live again and embrace what Thoreau says, and in where I lived and what I lived for. I wanted to live what was life. I did not want to live what was not life. I didn't want to resign to that. I think I read for you earlier this year, William Wordsworth's "The World is Too Much With Us," and just a couple of the lines of that to think about Chris McCandless. Wordsworth says, "The world is too much with us, late and soon. Getting and spending, we lay waste our powers. Little we see in nature that is ours. We have given our hearts away, a sordid boon." And that poem, he goes on to say, the winds are howling, the winds of the world, and we are like ripped out of the ground before we even know what's going on. And Chris is smart enough to get that. Chris is smart enough to get that. Coming to Jalen, yes. Jalen, yes. Like, right, grab somebody and you're going to do this, right? That's not what is going on with most people. We do a lot of stuff that we do because society does it, right? Now, we are, by the way, America, parts of Europe, are the freest, free-thinking, I think of a speech recently given by Mario Cuomo. He said he's laid up at night trying to envision. I think he said there's 19 million New Yorkers. Like, I'm going to tell 19 million New Yorkers what to do, and I need them to cooperate. He goes, this is America. This is New York. These people, we don't like to be told what to do. And he said, I hoped and prayed that with enough facts, people would see the light and do what I ask. So yes, no, by American, the very nature of being American is don't tell me what to do. But there are a lot of things that we do because society, an invisible hand of society, pushes us to do that. And McCandless is definitely, and that is when I ask you guys why you want to go to college, you usually come right back. I want to get a good job. Why do you want to get a good job? I want to make plenty of money. Why do you want to make plenty of money? Because I was told I need to make plenty of money so I can have all the things that we have. A lot of times we don't ask, do we really need all this stuff? Right? That is society telling you what to do. It's an invisible hand, but a great point, Jalen. Okay. So McCandless is out there trying to find out the meaning of life, the very thing that Thoreau was after, the very thing that many philosophers are after. Okay. He's thinking. Okay. And he decides to flout the laws and do what he wants to do. And he does. And he goes on this sort of, he gets in a canoe and decides to go down the Colorado River. And I would tell you, if you want, get on Google Maps, go to the Colorado River, go to the Grand Canyon and watch it snake down into Mexico. That's where he is on a canoe. Not a very hospitable place, I might add. And he even says on 31, this is I think Krakauer. He's quoting James Joyce, the great writer of Ireland. James Joyce in his epic book of Portrait of an Artist as a Young Man, a book that you would read in college, not necessarily in high school. He said, this is what James Joyce felt when he decided that he was not going to do what society wanted him to do in Ireland in the 1940s or 1914s, which was, as an Irish Catholic son, he was very much encouraged to be a priest, and he decided he was not going to be a priest. He was going to be an artist. And he said he was unheeded, happy, and near to the wild heart of life. He was alone and young and willful and wild-hearted, alone amid the waste of wild air and brackish waters and a sea harvest of shells entangled and veil of gray sunlight. Okay, he was not going to be told what to do. 1 second. Look on my reading list. Just thought of, right? He was near to the wild heart of life. Wild at heart. Book about a guy who goes out in the wild. Haven't read it yet. Still sitting here waiting. So, again, people take these quotes, going back to the beginning, people take quotes, they touches them here or here, and they want to come back to them and look at them again. Ronnie, you've been to the bottom of the Grand Canyon. Did you hike it, take a boat, or did you come down with the mules, right? I've been to the bottom of the Grand Canyon several times, and yes, indeed, it is life-changing. All right, so moving along, his adventure is a little weird because Krakauer shares a lot of quotes from Chris McCandless. So he tells the story of himself in third. You took a chopper, you cheater. My goodness. That's like saying you went there and Google. Well, okay, a chopper is a little exciting, I must admit. All right, but you didn't hoof it. You bum. You lazied it up. All right, I would do the chopper, but no, I've hiked it multiple times. I've never taken the river down. That would be actually pretty awesome. The whole third person stuff about Chris McCandless describing himself in third person is basically Chris stepping back and saying, "Hey, look at what I am doing. This is what society would say about me." He's rebelling, and he's telling that story. It enhances that rebellion, right? Instead of I think I'm going to do this, I think I'm going to do that. He kind of steps back. It's like, this is what society would say. Alexander Supertramp is doing this, and Alexander Supertramp is doing that. There was a question the other day: is Chris and Alex the same person? For a while, they were a little confused, and yes, they are the same person. He's going by the name of Alexander Supertramp. So that's the whole reason for that third person business, okay? All right, moving on to 38, okay? If you don't think quotes matter, look at the top of 38. First quote is from Jack London's Call of the Wild. Call of the Wild, by the way, is this book by Jack London told through the eyes of a dog. Okay, it's now a recent movie. Okay, and it's probably pretty decent given the fact that Harrison Ford is in it. But this is a quote from the book from the buck's perspective, the dog. The dominant primordial beast was strong and buck, and under the fierce conditions of trail life, it grew and grew. Yet it was a secret growth. His newborn cunning gave him poise and control. Right? That's marked in Chris McCandless's book. Okay. What does he write in graffiti? All hail the dominant primordial beast and Captain Ahab too. Alexander Supertramp, May 1992. Okay. Quotes matter. When you hear critics saying, what do you know what he was thinking when he wrote that stuff? They matter, right? They give insight into our mindset. Okay. And so moving on with 42, they spend time talking about his lost year where he's working at McDonald's, not wearing socks, which is interesting. And he kind of loses himself in that sort of mindless work, right? And on 42, 43, they talk about the fact this place called the Slabs. Now, if you go to the Google Sites page and you go to the End of the Wild, I have pictures of all these places. The Slabs is an interesting place. It's a place outside of Niland, Arizona that I hope to go one day. It would be a bit of a pilgrimage out into the desert. But they talk about, this is in the middle of 43, that in November, as the weather turns cold across the rest of the country, some 5,000 snowbirds and drifters and sundry vagabonds congregate in the otherworldly setting to live on the cheap under the sun. The Slabs functions as a seasonal capital of the teeming itinerant society, a tolerant, rubber-tired culture comprising the retired, the exiled, the destitute, the perpetually unemployed. Its constituents are men and women and children of all ages, folks on the dodge from collection agencies, relationships gone sour, the law or the IRS. Ohio winters. We made it in the middle class grind, okay? It is a place for American gypsies, basically. Drifters, vagabonds, wanderers, people who just said, screw society, I'm getting out of here, or screw Ohio and it's winter, I'm getting out of here. And so this is all sort of the place that, and McCandless finds this place, right? This is his kind of, these are a bunch of modern day Thoreaus in some regards, right? And just a sort of an oddity about human nature. One of his heroes is Jack London. And if you look on 44, right, he talks about, this is very interesting that Krakauer points out this kind of an inconsistency with Chris McCandless. But we also have to remember he's a young person. He's 22. Okay, he's a college grad, but he loves Jack London. But Jack London, he says, mesmerized by London's turgid portrayal of life in Alaska and the Yukon, McCandless read and reread The Call of the Wild, To Build a Fire, An Odyssey of the North. Okay, he was so enthralled by these tales, however, that he seemed to forget they were works of fiction, constructions of the imagination that had more to do with London's romantic sensibilities than with the actualities of life in the subarctic wilderness. McCandless conveniently overlooked the fact, this is interesting, right, that London himself had spent just a single winter in the North and that he died by his own hand on a California estate at the age of 40, okay? A fatuous drunk, an obese and pathetic person maintaining a sedentary existence that bore scant resemblance to the ideas he espoused in print. Jack London wrote it, but he didn't do it. Okay, London had a little bit of. I've read some of his. He went on a journey to Hawaii, which is a big deal in the 1800s, in way before it was a state. But he also, I think, beat his girlfriend / wife. Was an alcoholic. He didn't live. He did not do what Thoreau did. Thoreau practiced what he preached. So did Whitman. Okay? And so that's just an oddity of human nature. So Thoreau practiced what he preached. Whitman practiced what he preached. McCandless practiced what he preached. But some people cannot. Right? And I want to hearken you back to Tom Wingfield, right? A guy who is trapped also and moves out on it. A lot of the famous writers that you read about that ultimately die by their own hand or alcoholism or something to that effect. A lot of those guys, want to embrace what Thoreau and others have talked about, but never could. So finally, last stretch here, chapter 6. I'll let you to it, but Thoreau's quote here is very good, okay? And it's about finding certain happiness in life. And just a highlight of a couple points, he talks about the fact that the best parts of life are small little bits of happiness, right? And finding things that are scented herbs or starry nights and stuff like that. He says that is your success. I mean, that is your success. And the true harvest of my daily life is somewhat as intangible and indescribable as the tints of morning and evenings. Like what makes me happy is, why is the sunrise or sunset beautiful? It's just the tint of light, because it's very hard to describe or put your finger on. You know, the ultimate thing is, it's not the big thing, right? It's the small little things of life that are the good parts of life. That's what these guys are after. And this endless pursuit of things hurts us, okay? So the whole chapter 6 is about Ronald Franz, okay? The man who wants to adopt him, okay? And I would tell you, you need to watch the movie Into the Wild. And it doesn't matter whether you watch it now, you watch it while you're reading the book, or you watch it afterwards. It won't ruin the book. What it will do is accentuate it, because the movie is meant to be a companion piece, right? So is the soundtrack. I would YouTube the soundtrack of Into the Wild and listen to that music by Eddie Vedder. It's gorgeous. I would look at the words to it. You know, again, it's magnificent music, okay? It's not a very long soundtrack either. But I want to leave you today. Franz is searching for what he is missing, which is human companionship and love, because his family was killed by drunk drivers so many years ago. Chris McCandless also searching for what is missing. But I want you to look at 56, and this is where we'll leave it for today. It's the letter that McCandless wrote to Franz, and it starts on the bottom here and moves to the top. He says, he tells me, I'd like you to just take that advice that I gave you, right? But listen to these words and think Tom Wingfield, right? Think all the guys we've talked about, and we didn't even get a chance to do On the Road by Jack Kerouac. I mean, this is a common American motif, all right? And it's not a fake or phony motif. It's almost indelible in the American spirit, this wanderingness that we have. One of my favorite quotes of all time is from the Sherpas of the Himalayas, or the Himalayas, that after they helped the English get to the top of Mount Everest, okay, Sir Edmund Hillary asked him, what can I do for you guys, your people that helped me get to the top and help the empire get to the top of Mount Everest? And the Sherpa said, we do not want that wandering white man spirit that you English people are infected with. Okay, remember, the craziest wandering gypsies of England came to America, all right? And we are sort of that manifestation of that. The crazy explorers and so on. So the Sherpa's like, we don't want any of that stuff. We would like a school, though. We'd like to learn about the world, but we do not want to be infected with that you have. And we've talked about how it's in here. I think we've talked about it in class that, you know, there are accounts. It says there are many, many accounts in American history where European-based people have turned into Indians, if you will. They've lived with Native Americans, but there is no account where Native Americans have willfully lived with us, right? There is something corrosive, if you will, about our society in a way. It's very wound tight, okay? And we can see that in our history, European history, okay, the Roman history, all that stuff is in there. But anyway, the last thing here, Chris says, so many people live within unhappy circumstances and yet will not take the initiative to change their situation because they are conditioned to a life of security, conformity, and conservatism, all of which may appear to give one peace of mind. But in reality, nothing is more damaging to the adventurous spirit within a man than a secure future. The very basic core of a man's living spirit is his passion for adventure. The joy of life comes from our encounters with new experiences, and hence there is no greater joy than to have an endlessly changing horizon from each day to have a new and different sun. I don't have Alfred Lord Tennyson's Ulysses with me, but I wish I did, because there are some lines in it about sailing beyond the sunset, about hacking the woods, or about slashing at the sea with their oars to get out into to go beyond the horizon. And remember what Tom Wingfield said about life. Man is by instinct a lover, a hunter, and a fighter, and none of those instincts get much play at a warehouse. Okay. And so all of this, right, is about that. As a human spirit, we need adventure. Okay. So the last thing is and I want you to think of McCandless and his adventure on the way out. The last thing I'll leave you with, and it's a kind of human quality. I think it's a little odd and maybe overdone, but Franz, when he finds out that Chris McCandless has died, renounces religion, becomes an atheist, and quits going to church. All right. It's a guy that's like 90 who lost his family after World War II. So he endured World War II, his family killed by a drunk driver, and he gives up on all things spiritual because of McCandless's death. I don't know. Maybe that quote's taken out of context, or taken right after Franz was suffering emotionally, but that is a human quality that oftentimes when we see bad things in the world, we lose a type of faith in any kind of spiritual sense. All right, with that, guys, we will leave you on 4 through 6 is done. I'll meet you next week for 7, 8, and 9. Okay. Don't feel like you got to wait on me. You can chug along. All right. And we'll meet back up. If you have any questions or anything that you want me to discuss, send me an email ahead of time. Say, hey, I want you to touch on this, touch on that. I'll read those and I'll mark them down to talk about. And then I will also post Monday a rhetorical analysis to practice. I again, we're going to experiment. Same thing, 15 minutes, and then watch the deconstruction at your leisure, because we got 2 more shots at it before you guys take it for real. Okay? A trip to Alaska. Jacob, I really don't want to go to Alaska. It's cold in the winter, and you get eaten alive by mosquitoes or bears in the summertime. So there's other places closer to go. All right? Start with Old Man's Cave first, Red River Gorge. All right, guys, it's been 33 minutes. Thank you. And like I said, give me a holler about the next 3 chapters if there's something specifically that you would like me to address. All right, be good. I'll talk to you soon.